We're going to talk about your boy, Jon Stewart. And wow, I mean, you know, I was just talking a little bit about how the landscape has changed. And Glenn, I cut it out, but Glenn at the beginning of that piece kind of talks about the nature of fame in the 2020s and how, you know, someone like Andrew Huberman is pretty famous, but like a lot of people have no idea who he is, but he has like millions of followers, you know, and that is the nature of fame now. And I think that people like Jon Stewart, Dave Smith said it best. He's trying to fit a 2006 size peg into a 2024 size hole, and it's just not working for him. But let's watch. So basically, I just want to show this breakdown Dave Smith did of Jon Stewart's kind of attack on Tucker Carlson, because it was totally disingenuous and not based in any kind of fact. But I did a piece on that already. This is more about the current attack that Jon is doing on Donald Trump. And Tim Pool actually pointed out how ridiculous it is the other day, because he dug up a little factoid about Jon selling his New York penthouse for like $17 million. And you could apply the same kind of logic to him if you wanted to get him into court for overvaluing his property is the point Tim was making. But you know, the press tried to misconstrue it as he's accusing Jon Stewart of fraud. He's actually not doing that. He's actually just trying to show you that how disingenuous the case against Trump is. But let's go back a little bit and watch this bit with Dave Smith.
You're a product of your time. You all are. But there's something about Jon Stewart, like, look, the point I'm making in regards to Jon Stewart is that this whole, like, you can't hear from the other side because there's a war. This is all the last 5 minutes. Yeah. This isn't old. A few months back.
This whole you can't hear from the other side because there's a war, he said it just started 5 minutes ago. No, it's actually a throwback to the Iraq war era. That's what the neocons did. If you're not with us, you're with the terrorists. If you're not with Ukraine, you support Putin. It's the same thing because it's the same people.
From the other side because there's a war. This is all the last 5 minutes. This isn't old. You remember how The Guardian scrubbed Osama bin Laden's letter to America a few months back?
Oh, that's because it was turning on all the Gen Zers.
Right.
To go out to Afghanistan and find themselves.
I remember this very well. Just to summarize what that letter said, Osama bin Laden was like, we know that if we just like bomb a place, America will come with all its military resources. And our plan is to drain them of their wealth and get them caught up in a bunch of endless wars until they collapse on themselves. Interesting, isn't it?
Some husbands.
Yeah, right. But what the point is, they just scrubbed it last year, late last year. But it had been published up there since 2002, I think. It was maybe even 2001. I think maybe 2002. But it had been up on The Guardian because that was the way news was always done back then. It was like, oh, we're at war with this guy. Here's what he says. There's an interview that was just going viral the other day, an interview with Saddam Hussein as American troops were amassing, about to invade the country. I think it was like a week and a half before the war kicked off. Like, it had already been said that we're invading. We're coming here to invade you. And yeah, journalists sit down with microphones and talk to him. And like that's always the way it's been done. And so to sit here and act like this is some crazy thing, to think that, and by the way, we're not technically, I mean, according to that, we're not at war with Russia. Right? I mean, we're backing the other side of the war, but there's nothing, it makes no sense by any of the reasonable standards that we all had up until 5 minutes ago to be like, oh, the American people shouldn't hear Putin's side of the story. All right, let's keep.
Yeah, again, but he brought up the point, they actually interviewed Saddam Hussein. So it wasn't even that bad during the Iraq war.
Fine.
Just out of curiosity, as a student, when you're sitting there interviewing Putin and you don't plan to challenge his utter bullshit, but you don't want to really be that obvious, what do you do with your face? Oh, I see. Okay, so it's not really a straight face as much as you try to convey a mixture of what appears to be shame, arousal, and I'm going to say irregularity. For instance,
so funny.
Like you're constipated while jerking off to a Sears catalog. Been there, haven't you? The guy up there saying, like, well, the lingerie ads were
funny and all, but I'm just going to take a quick aside because Jon Stewart acts like Tucker didn't challenge Putin, but he actually did. Work. And I'm going to show you a clip of it right now.
Someone who's very famous in the United States, probably not here, Evan Gershkovich, who's the Wall Street Journal reporter. He's 32, and he's been in prison for almost a year. This is a huge story in the United States, and I just want to ask you directly, without getting into the details of it or your version of what happened, if as a sign of your decency, you would be willing to release him to us and we'll bring him back to the United States.
Shut up, Jon
ambiguity in what Putin says. But what if Putin starts saying shit like World War II was Poland's fault because they forced Hitler to invade them? I mean, what do you do with something like that? That's going to be hard.
After World War I, this territory was transferred to Poland, and instead of Danzig, a city of Dansk emerged. Hitler asked them to give it amicably, but they refused.
Of course.
Got him.
Just pause it for a second. Like, it's amazing how much people rely on the ignorance of their audience. Because
again, going back to the infantilization thing, Stewart knows no one in his audience watched the Tucker Carlson interview, because if they did, they would know he was lying about how he's painting it. And that's why he has to have a canned laugh track.
Everything Putin just said there is a fact. It's just a historical fact. And it's not, Putin didn't say, assuming his translators tell him you know what I mean? Like, Putin didn't say that's why Germany was forced to invade, or that's why Poland was in the wrong for not giving Danzig back. But it's just a fact that after World War I, Poland took control of this city that had historically been German, and that Hitler wanted it back, and they wouldn't give it. And then he invaded.
Stupid ass boy. Hey,
so when Tucker Carlson says, of course, he's going, yeah, of course that happened. Like, there's nothing controversial about the statement. It literally be like, it's on the level of like, Japan bombed the United States of America, attacked the United States of America at Pearl Harbor, and then America declared war. There's no moral, like, I'm not even saying like Japan was right or wrong, or America was right or wrong. It's just, there's nothing to debate about there. All of that happened. It's just very bizarre. So far, this entire thing, it's like Jon Stewart is he's not making any points. He's not making any jokes that make a point. He's made fun of Tucker's face and did an okay job, I guess. Like, and then he's making fun of the fact that he's interviewing Putin, which is just insane. So, like, okay, where's the like smart commentary that he's supposed to have with these jokes? I just don't like, this isn't political humor. This is just stupid. All right, guys.
Let's bring in Keith Olbermann. Keith, what do you think about it?
Now, I'll confess that I have licked Joe Biden's dick all the way through since 1975.
Very insightful commentary there from Mr. Keith Olbermann. Let's keep going at it here. And in this next clip, I want to show you, again, what I talked about with Tim Pool, but Tim Pool kind of exposed how disingenuous Jon Stewart is being on the whole Trump, real estate thing. And Tim Dillon actually did a great bit about how he's like, how it started and how it is now. Like, basically, originally Trump was like a secret Russian spy and an insurgent of America. And now it's like, he lied about the value of his real estate. So Tim Pool on an episode a couple nights ago, was making fun of Jon Stewart's disingenuous diatribe about Trump, and then went, I did a quick Google, Jon Stewart selling something, and he sold a place. He sold his penthouse back in 2014 in Manhattan. So Tim starts looking at the tax basically the tax assessed value of these properties in the same area on Zillow. And what he finds is that there are properties in this part of New York that are valued at like millions of dollars, like $13-14 million. And the tax assessment is like $500,000, which is interesting because Jon Stewart's whole premise is he's mad at Kevin O'Leary for saying that like this is going to scare business away from New York. But it's clear from what Tim Pool was looking into that people are in these multi-million-dollar penthouses are paying way less taxes on their property than they should be. And maybe that's a New York law. Like, I don't know what the deal is on that. But if you go to Zillow and like Tim did and look at these properties, the actual selling value versus the tax assessed value is way, way more. So it's kind of like just proving Tim's point that, or Kevin O'Leary's point that like, if you do this to Trump, it's going to scare all the business out of New York because everyone is doing this. So listen to what Tim Pool has to say about it.
About falsifying documents and not about whether Trump committed fraud. It was a separate thing. So what we have here is, let's separate the underlying fraud case. What we have here is Jon Stewart being wrong, saying on TV, and let me pull up the quote again from the Blaze so I can show you. Going back up, Stewart suggested the banks were victimized. And let's see, here we go. Letitia James knew that Trump's property values were inflated because when it came time to pay taxes, Trump undervalued the very same properties. False. Trump didn't value tax assessment. The city did. That's the point I made initially. What happens then is Jon Stewart deflects with this nonsensical statement, and then leftist media comes out and claims.
I love how like everyone that's against Tim Pool is a leftist. Like that's his whole thing. It's hilarious.
I'm literally accusing Jon Stewart of fraud when what I'm really doing is mocking him for his false statement.
The modern Democratic Party is not on the left. I mean, I say that every day 1,000 times, but I apparently have to keep saying it because they're not.
Now, here's the problem. The people who read Mediaite are going to make the assumption I was literally accusing Jon Stewart of fraud. The point is, what Trump did and what Jon Stewart did, neither of which is fraud and are different. Jon Stewart claimed Trump evaluated his own taxes. Now I've got people tweeting being like, Tim Pool doesn't realize the government evaluates the taxes, not Jon Stewart. And I'm like, duh. Jon Stewart didn't realize.
Also, the banks that give these loans out do their own research. They do due diligence. They check on your numbers.
That. That's the whole point.
And the bank actually testified they made money on the deal. That's the best part. There's no victim in this crime. It's clearly just a like, hey, we got to get Trump for something.
Point.
And Jon Stewart buys it all. When asked for comment about Jon Stewart's return to The Daily Show, he had this to say.
I've not yet begun to defile myself.
So for those of you that actually watch my show and saw my actual breakdown of what this was, you know the truth. There may or may not be something underlying the Trump fraud case. Sure, I certainly think there isn't based on what we're seeing. And I made that argument for it ad nauseum. But what we're seeing here is the media breakdown for political power. This woman from the Sarah Rumpf woman from Mediaite writes the opinion piece without actually even looking into anything I've said about Jon Stewart, for which she might go, oh, that's what he meant. And here we are. Now, because the internet and Poe's law, and oh, don't get me wrong, I totally understand this. I tweet silly, nonsensical things all the time. But I think it's fair to point out, I quite literally did not accuse him of committing fraud. I said, did he commit fraud when he sold his penthouse? He listed it for this, but it was valued at this. Who did he defraud? I am shocked. And this is immediately following.
He's just pointing out the hypocrisy. That's it. He's not accusing anyone of anything.
Jon Stewart's show where he claimed they knew Trump committed fraud because he undervalued when it came time to pay taxes. There you go. Have fun, Jon Stewart. I'm sure you'll write something up for your show on Monday and you'll get it grievously wrong.